The War of 1812, Henry Ford, and Donald Trump are all on this day. Welcome back to On This Day. Today's date is January 13th, 2023. It is the second Friday in the second week and the 24th day of winter. There are 66 days left until spring. If today's your birthday, you're still a Capricorn. Today is Public Radio Broadcasting Day. Public Radio Broadcasting Day is observed annually on January 13th, and we celebrate a very special piece of technology, the radio. This day is set aside to honor all the people involved in radio, whether it's the DJ or the people that invented the radio. It changed our lives in a lot of different ways. Entertainment, military applications, police work, ham radios. Do people still do ham radio? I had a cousin, sadly, he died of cancer like 2 years ago. He was all into that back before the internet, and he was way into it. I don't think his neighbors were that into it because he had this giant antenna off his garage and he lived with his mom. And yes, he was about 35 at the time. I guess that's what happens when you're into ham radio. You end up living with your parents for a long time. But she had a lot of money and she lived in a really nice neighborhood, and they just had this giant antenna sticking off of their garage. But yeah, today is National Radio Broadcasting Day. Go listen to WTSQ out of Charleston, West Virginia. My friends work there. It's a great community radio station. All right, let's see what else January 13th has given us. 1815, the War of 1812. British troops capture Fort Peter in St. Mary's, Georgia. The only battle to take place in the Walnut State. Just kidding, Georgia's called the Peach State. I like to slip those in on the other channel all the time to see if anyone notices. 1833, United States President Andrew Jackson writes to Vice President Martin Van Buren expressing his opposition to South Carolina's defiance of federal authorities in the nullification crisis. 1942, Henry Ford patents a soybean car, which was 30% lighter than the typical car of the day. And that car is your deep dive today. The soybean car was a concept car built with agricultural plastic. The New York Times in 1941 states that the car's body and fenders were made from a strong material derived from soybeans, wheat, and corn. Now, this car wasn't just soybeans. It was a mixture of soybeans, wheat, hemp, flax, and formaldehyde mixed into a resin. The resin was shaped into fenders and things like that. They weren't making engine blocks out of this. It wasn't strong enough. But for a fender or some of the inner panels of the car, it worked perfectly. Now, this thing was lighter and it would be more fuel efficient because the heavier a vehicle is, the more power it takes to move it. More power, you get that from more fuel. So it was more fuel efficient. But that wasn't why they were doing this. They weren't looking to save some fuel by making lighter cars. It takes power to move a car. How do you get more power? More gasoline, more fuel. The real reason they were doing this is because of steel rationing during World War II. They didn't have the supplies they needed to build a whole bunch of cars. They were also in fear of fuel rationing, which they did a little bit of that, but they were really afraid that, it'd be hard to come by fuel in the future. This car could run on hemp fuel, I should say. It's not like they were just sticking plants in the gas tank. Now, this was a concept cars, and concept cars are usually great ideas and all these things they're working at towards the future. Concept cars never get made. Maybe things that were in that concept car do get made, and something did sort of come out of this. Plastic. At the end of World War II, since there was no more rationing of anything, they could start to work on other things, and plastic was kind of new on the scene in the years after World War II. So instead of making bioplastics out of plants, they just went with petroleum-based plastics, the ones we kind of use to this day. 1990, Douglas Wilder becomes the first elected African-American governor as he takes office as the governor of Virginia in Richmond, Virginia. 1993, the Chemical Weapons Convention, or CWC, is signed. 2021, outgoing U.S. President Donald Trump is impeached for the second time on the charges of inciting an insurrection following the January 6th United States Capitol attack 1 week prior. Movies released on January 13th, 1995, Legends of the Fall. Great movie. This is it's a war movie and it's a Western. Anyway, it's an epic Western movie about Colonel William Ludlow and his 3 sons in their rural Montana homestead. When the family encounters tragedy during World War I, 2 of the sons return home and end up falling in love with the same woman. I watched this movie years ago. I've watched it a couple times. It's a great movie. It stars Brad Pitt, Anthony Hopkins, Henry Thomas, Aidan Quinn, and Julia Ormond. Now, there's a little bit of a twist here. Samuel, the youngest brother, played by Henry Thomas, is in love with Julia Julia Ormond, and they're going to be married. Well, he goes off to World War I and he dies. So now she's living at this big ranch with Anthony Hopkins, and the two other brothers come home from World War I. Brad Pitt is totally emotional over his younger brother dying. He wasn't able to save him, and Julia Ormond comforts him. They become lovers. But Tristan, Brad Pitt, is a wild man and he needs to be places. So he's out on the open sea and he's doing all kinds of adventurous things, and she ends up marrying Aidan Quinn, the oldest brother. It's got all kinds of twists and turns. It's a great story if you ever get a chance to watch this movie. It is slow at parts, but it's a great story. Born on January 13th, 1990, Liam Hemsworth, Australian actor who stars as Gale Hawthorne on the Hunger Game film series. He's also Thor's brother. Yeah, he's Chris Hemsworth who plays Thor. It's his brother. Liam Hemsworth was engaged to Miley Cyrus. They almost got married back in like 2013. God, 2013. It's like 10 years ago. What happened to my life? I don't know what it is, but the last handful of years have seemed like my life's in a rocket ship and it's just flying past dates. Died on January 13th, 1929, Wyatt Earp, gambler, Pima County Deputy Sheriff, and Deputy Town Marshal of Tombstone, Arizona, who was famous for the gunfight at the OK Corral. He was a Western legend and he supposedly killed all these men. Later on in life, he said, yeah, he didn't kill half the people that everyone thought he killed. He worked as a farmer, a miner, and a boxing referee. He is known to be the toughest and deadliest gunman of his day. Wyatt Earp led an interesting life. He was in Alaska for a while, and there's this famous saloon in Juneau called the Red Dog Saloon, and I guess you have to check in your weapon at the door back in the day. Well, he checked his in, got too drunk, and didn't take it with him when he left that night. Well, the next day he had to be on a boat, didn't have time to go back to the bar, or the bar was closed, and the boat was leaving, so he ended up leaving his gun behind, and now it hangs over the bar. Wyatt Earp died in Los Angeles, California of chronic cysts. On January 13th, 1929, he was 80 years old. You know, normally when the word gunfighter is associated with your name, you don't live past 50. He made it all the way to 80. Good job. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go out, have a great day, and be nice to each other.